There was only one thing that stuck out to me as being wrong about my new apartment room. There were a few bad tiles at the end of the hall which rustled and squeaked every time I stepped on them. Being that I was the new superintendent, I figured I'd just repair them myself instead of getting an outside contractor to do it. I examined the tiles first just to see what I was getting into, and I found out they were completely unsecured from the floor. As soon as I removed the very first tile, I noticed a little door of some kind underneath. I continued to remove the rest of the tiles with little trouble, and that's when I noticed the indented latch on the door. A layer of caked-on dust was stuck on it, and I was dumbstruck by the whole finding. I decided to open it and take a look inside. It was too dark to see most of it, but I could make out most of the details. The room was completely empty except for another door on the side and the ladder that went straight down into the room. You might think I was so curious that I went down the ladder to take a look, but there was no way in hell I was going down there unless I had a very good reason to. At that moment, I only wanted to get the floor secured and the door completely covered up. After I found it that day, I called the apartment owner and asked him if he knew about the underground room. He sounded as surprised as I was, and he claimed he had no idea it even existed. The rest of the day was rather uneventful until that night. That night marked the first time I started having those weird dreams of my neighboring tenants. Every single one of these dreams consisted of my tenants in the apartment building, going about their daily lives. There was absolutely nothing else in my dreams besides that, and I could recall even the most mundane details of each one. Some of those dreams were particularly disturbing in that they revealed more than I should have known or wanted to see. In one dream, I saw the couple in room 102 arguing in their bedroom about whether they should keep the baby, and in another I saw the man in 107, leaning toward the knife drawer as he cried his heart out. Half of his arms were covered in cuts, and some of those were bleeding pretty badly. The next few nights became the same routine, and I was having trouble stomaching it. Yet I didn't want to think too much of it. I figured it was probably just a weird coincidence or some bad brain chemistry. Then I had another dream of a tenant, which involved me. In the dream, I was sitting at the kitchen table, and I heard somebody knocking on my door. I got up to see who it was through my peephole, and I noticed a man in a Catholic uniform. He was standing still, staring at the peephole, and he continued knocking. I didn't recognize him as any of my tenants, so I was hesitant about answering the door. So I just stood there for a few moments and stared through the peephole. Then I thought about what I was doing, or rather what I wasn't doing, and I realized how stupid it would be for me to not answer the door. I unlocked the door and swung it open, but I woke up right before I saw the man. I thought about that dream throughout the day, and I couldn't help but wonder about the past events. I had not even the slightest idea as to the purpose of the underground rooms underneath my own, nor the cause of the recent dreams I had been having. Later that night, I was sitting in the kitchen eating dinner when I heard somebody knocking on my front door. I got up to see who it was, and it felt like a ton of bricks fell over me. I could hardly stand, and the blood rushed through me. The man standing at my door, whom I could see through the peephole, was the same man as I had seen in my prior dream. It was the man in the Catholic clothing, and I felt just like I did before, but 10 times worse. Yet again, I stood there staring out the peephole, and I mentally refused to open the door for a few moments. Then there was no waiting any longer, as I knew I was the superintendent, and if anybody had an inquiry, I needed to heed their call. So I opened the door and asked the man what he needed. "May I come in?" he asked. "We need to talk." I ushered him into my kitchen, and we sat on opposite sides of each other. There was a moment of silence, and then he continued. "You haven't met me yet, but I live in room 109 at the end of the hall. I came here because I know what you've seen in the past few days, and I'd like to offer you a job of sorts." I just stared at him blankly, and I wasn't entirely sure what he was referring to. A tinge of fear struck through me, though, as I recalled the dreams and the underground rooms. I could only imagine where this was going. "What are you talking about?" I asked. He had a slight smile now, and he hadn't moved an inch from when he sat down. His eyes never strayed from my mind, and it was like he was staring through my soul. He leaned in closely towards me and the table before he continued. "I know about the rooms underneath your apartment. I also know about those dreams regarding the various tenants, and I can describe one of them to prove it to you. You remember that cutter in room 107, don't you? He was crying and clutching that knife of his." The final realization struck me like a ton of bricks. It was true that he was aware of what had been going on, but I didn't know how he knew. I was worried about his potential involvement and what he might try to do in the future. So you know of everything, how? He leaned in closer. You're one of us now. You're one with the walls. That's why you can see the other tenants in your dreams, and that's why you're going to do this job for us. I was shaking profusely and sweat beads were forming all over my skin. What job? I asked. You're going to mark somebody for us using a special vial. Then we'll take care of that somebody, and in return we'll give you eternal power over the entire apartment. I gulped down some air and shook my head wildly from side to side. Sweat covered my clothes, and that desire of escape came back tenfold. Only this time, I was getting the feeling he was far more of a threat than I realized before. So I stayed in that chair, but he got up from his. He returned to the front door, and he was just about to open it when he said something else. In the meantime, we'll prepare the vial, and you can just wait until the moment is ready. Don't try to run, though, or else we'll drown your fucking screams and bury you at the bottom of the walls. He opened the door then and walked out. I was left there as a shambling mess, shaking in my own sweat and tears falling down my cheeks. I kept mumbling, "No, this can't be real. This can't be real." I stayed there in that room for the rest of the day, and I didn't open the door for anybody. I didn't answer any calls, and I didn't even call the police. How could I? How would they understand what he told me, and what could they even do? I fell asleep later that night, and I had another dream about that man from 107. He was audibly crying, but this time he was lying under the covers in his bedroom. I noticed a pill bottle not too far from his side, and several pills had been spilled out all over the blanket. His cries were getting quieter, and his facial expressions were becoming more lax. Eventually, his cries went silent, and his eyes were closed as he lied perfectly still in the bed. Then something else woke me up. It sounded like somebody was calling my name from the living room, and I jolted out of my bed. I stumbled towards the light switch, and I went out into the hall. That's when I saw the man from 109 at the end in the living room. His head and upper body were somehow suspended from the ceiling, and he was upside down. His eyes were looking directly at me, and he continued to call my name. I walked into the living and looked up at the ceiling where the man was hanging from. His whole body beneath the waist was infused with it. It wasn't even clear when his skin ended and the ceiling continued. It was like he was one with it. He had his arm up, and he was holding a small glass vial of red liquid. It wasn't marked, and I had no idea of the contents. I know you saw him try to kill himself with those sleeping pills, but he's still alive. He won't be for very long, though, and we need him alive, as he's the most emotionally vulnerable person we have available to us. Take this vial and use it to subdue him. He doesn't have to consume the liquid. You only need to pour it over him. After that, we'll take care of him. I did the unthinkable then, but I was afraid of the consequences. I took the vial and got prepared to sneak into 107. It was in the early morning hours, and everyone was asleep. It was the perfect time to pull something like this off, but I could only hope that I didn't wake somebody up before then. So I had to carefully and slowly make my way into room 107. Once inside, everything was so simple. I just walked to the man's bedroom, just as carefully as I did before, and he was still in the same position as he was in my dream. Even the sleeping pills were still on the bed. I walked over to his side, and I held the vial in my hand as he stared down at him. When I was ready, I did just as instructed and poured the vial on the man. The entirety of the contents poured over his head and remained as still as before. Then I heard the sound of stretching, and when I turned, I could see those things forming in the ceiling. The first being the man from 107, as he hung upside down with his waist attached to the ceiling, and the rest of them just looked like human faces with their skin infused with the surface. All of their eyes were looking at me, and the man from 109 began speaking to me. You've prepared the offering to the labyrinth, and now we'll finish it. I didn't turn back around or stay to see what would happen. I just ran back to my room and hoped to God nobody would ever know. I had a hope that I would never have to face damnation for what I had done. I returned to my own bed, but I didn't fall asleep again. I stayed in that bed for what must have been an hour, or perhaps two. That's when the screams started, and it only took me a few moments before realizing they came from those secret rooms underneath my floor. You open your eyes. An endless ocean of black fills your vision. You blink, try to cast the darkness away, but the veils of blackness still loom over your body. You try to move, but a cold wall, inches away from your face, pins you to the ground. Distressed, you stare into the empty void pressing down on you. Questions start to form in your mind. Are you asleep? Have you gone blind? Are you dead? Seconds become minutes, and minutes become hours. Or so you think. You have completely lost any concept of time. You put your hands against the firm wall on top of you, trying to push yourself away from the darkness. You manage to move your body a few inches, your nails clawing at the hard wall and your legs scraping against the cold floor. But the top of your head hits another hard surface, and you are forced to stop. Suddenly, you hear a creaking noise coming from above. Something is on the other side. You can definitely hear a squeaking sound, faint but clear. But as swiftly as it started, the sound stopped. You are once again plunged into complete silence. Then, a dreary thought sneaks into your mind. You are buried alive. It seems obvious now. The sound you just heard was your coffin groaning under the weight of the dirt above. You are trapped. A feeling of claustrophobia builds up in your heart. A cry of utter despair and hopelessness bursts out of your lungs. Help, you shout, but you know it is all in vain. Nobody can hear you. Your eyes wet. A warm tear drops on your cheek. You didn't want it to end this way. You had dreams, family, friends. You had your life to live. But your cruel fate has stripped everything away. You close your eyes. You pray that your torture ends quickly. After an indefinite amount of painful minutes, you begin to drift away, your existence slowly washing off the face of the earth. But then, you hear a sound. At first, you can't determine what it is, but slowly you recognize the familiar whooshing sound of a strong breeze. You must be very close to the surface. New hope is planted in your heart. You start yelling again, hoping to catch the attention of anyone passing near you. Suddenly, you hear a loud thump. The roof of your coffin bends inwards, the cold surface now pressing down on your face. You turn your head sideways to allow for breathing space. Something has fallen on your coffin. Is it dirt about to crush you? No, it can't be. Whatever caused the bend in is still moving. Maybe you aren't buried. But if that isn't the case, then where are you? A shiver runs down your spine. A question you should have thought earlier pops into your mind. How did you end up here? You realize you have no recollection of past events. Where were you and what were you doing? Your memory is completely blank. But you can't give it more thought as a creaking sound breaks the silence once more. The bend in above you subsides, indicating that the weight on top has shifted. You can very faintly hear a whimpering sound, like someone is trying to muffle his crying. Suddenly, a flash of light blinds you. You look at your right. A little crack has appeared in the blackness that surrounds you, allowing a sliver of light to invade your world of darkness. Your heart jumps. This is your escape. You extend your hand, your fingers touching the edge of the crack. You are surprised to find not the hard surface you imagined, but a smooth and soft cloth that parts under your light touch. You push with your fingers the velvet-like material apart, creating a hole big enough for your hand to pass through. With another push, your hand exits your dark prison and enters the world of light. The fresh air cools your skin, while you blindly explore your surroundings with your hand. At first, your palm lands on a cold surface that seems to extend far beyond your reach. But moving your hand up, you again come in contact with the soft material. You grab onto it, trying to determine how far up it goes. You start climbing up the cloth with your hand. But almost immediately, your fingertips reach the edge of the strange fabric. Suddenly, a high-pitched screech pierces your ears. Mommy! Mommy! After a few seconds, you hear a door opening. What is it, sweetie? A monster is under my bed. I was walking home one day from school as usual, but when I reached my neighborhood, nothing was right. Nothing was where it should be. I was caught in a maze. An endless maze in my own neighborhood. I was there for days, yet no one was there. The shadows, the darkness kept growing, coming closer, consuming. I awoke from this dream, no, this nightmare all the time. I woke last time shrouded by darkness, gazing at the vague outline of my room. I didn't want to close my eyes. I didn't want to sleep in fear that the nightmare would return. However, I did sleep, and the nightmare did return, like it always does. This has been happening for so long, I don't remember when it started. I do remember, however, that I was young. I was still in elementary school, 3rd grade, I think. Back then, I was able to return home, but the maze kept getting more complicated. When it started that I couldn't return home, I could at least get out of the maze. That changed as well, though. I couldn't get out the way I entered, but there was another exit. The road leading into my neighborhood is shaped like a U. Although that changed as well, and I couldn't leave. For a brief period of time after that, 1 or 2 weeks, I could return home, but it was pointless because there was nothing inside. It was just empty. One thing I noticed about this dream is that the more complicated the maze became, the more the darkness grew, and the more the darkness grew, I would feel a sense of dread and despair growing stronger and stronger. As this went on, I also got a feeling like something was slowly creeping up behind me. Now let me tell you about the last time I had this dream. It started like it always does, with me walking home, but strangely enough, I could find my way home. I opened the door, and inside everything was where it should be, which I found very strange. I explored my home, going into every room, with a few irregularities here and there, the number of which grew as I kept roaming. I eventually came across a door to the basement, which I found really strange since there isn't a basement in my house. I descended down into the basement, and when I got there, it was empty. The only peculiar thing was that the walls were a dark red instead of the usual concrete gray that you see. It started to feel like something was following me. This both annoyed me and creeped me out. I got out of the basement, and I walked around a bit more until I came across a staircase. I found this odd as well since there isn't a second floor in my house. I decided to go up the stairs, and as I reached the top of the stairs, it felt like there was something right behind me. I turned around, and to my relief, nothing was there. I checked all the rooms upstairs, and much like the basement, there was nothing in them. I went back downstairs, and after deciding I had enough and that I was really creeped out, I went to the front door. I opened the door, and as I stepped outside, I woke up. I've been up for a few days now. I don't want to know what would happen if I fall asleep again. I don't want to be caught in that nightmare again. Stupidly, though, I got up and took sleeping pills. It's 3 in the morning, and my eyelids are feeling heavy, closing every now and then. My head is thrown downwards, only for me to rise it back up again, until my eyes stayed shut and my head is thrown down along with my body. I'm walking home from school, and I have reached my neighborhood. I'm lost and confused, not knowing where I am in the neighborhood. As I'm walking through my neighborhood, I eventually found my house. I opened the door and walked in. As I walked in, everything was where it should be. Nothing was out of place. I went down the hallway leading to my bedroom, and as I went to open the door, I found myself staring down the hallway. I tried a few more times, but in vain. I decided to go into my mom's office, which is right next to my room. I turned on the lights, and again, nothing was out of place. I walked over to the door to the bathroom, and I opened it. Inside, the floor was drenched in blood, and on the toilet seat was a decapitated head. I exited the room. My stomach was feeling sick. After that, I tried going into my dad's office, but it was locked, so I went to my parents' bedroom. On the way through the living room, I noticed blood splattered throughout the living room. I entered my parents' bedroom, and I walked over to their bed. I looked over and saw 2 corpses in the bed. I turned around and headed to the door when I saw 2 more corpses. They were moving, crawling towards me. I ran out and slammed the door behind me. I headed towards the living room again. As I got back to the living room, I went to get the keys to my dad's office, since I know where they are. Before I went back to my dad's office, I went to try and get into my room again. I reached to open the door, and it actually opened this time. Inside, there were limbs scattered everywhere, and there was a skull in the bed. I closed the door and headed to my dad's office. I opened the door and slammed it shut right after. Inside, there was a decaying corpse hanging from a noose. The smell of ptomaine came through from the other side. I then ran to the door. I opened the door and walked outside. As soon as I closed the door behind me, the darkness had encompassed everything. I stared into the void for about 2 minutes, and then I saw movement. I couldn't see what it was, but I could see movement, and it appeared to come towards me. I turned to open the door behind me, but it wouldn't move. I turned back around to make a run for it, and As I did, I felt claws tear into my skin, slashing downwards, shredding my flesh. I woke up shrouded by darkness, looking at the vague outline of my room. I looked over to check the time. The light from my clock seemed dimmer than usual. It was 4 o'clock. I put my hand to my chest, and I felt a warm liquid flowing from it.